Assalamu alaikum. That means peace be unto you. I know you hear that from me every time I speak to you. And this is Islam works. Inshallah, that means God willing, we will dispel a lot of the false notions that people have about Islam. And inshallah, God willing, we'll help you to understand that Islam is for the whole of humanity, to help humanity to get out of the undignified situations we find ourselves in, to help the human family, the human race, to understand that what matters is the amount of good that you do, how you help your fellow human beings, not what type of car you drive or whether or not your clothes are from this fashion designer or that fashion designer, or how much money you have in the bank, or your level of education, or who your friends are, but the good that you do. At least, or I should say at the most, that's what God tells us in his book, the Quran, the book of guidance for humanity. You know, I was just reading in Surah 2, Al-Baqarah. And I was reading ayats, verses 168 and 169. Because we have our brother, our guest here, Brother Abdullah Baron, who's what are you again, Aki? Your degree?
My training is a master's in public health.
Master in public health. Yeah. And nutrition also?
And nutrition, yeah.
Okay.
Nutrition.
And I was reading, you know, the Quran has a reference for everything. And here, I was in the verses I was talking about, 168, 169, Allah says, and we begin reading the Quran by saying, A'udhu billahi minash shaitanir rajim. We seek refuge with Allah from Satan the accursed, and despised and rejected. And Allah says, O mankind. He doesn't say, O Muslims. He doesn't say, O white people, or O black people, or O Latinos, or O Indians. He says, O mankind. Eat of that which is lawful and good on the earth, and follow not the footsteps of Shaitan, of Satan. Verily he is to you an open enemy. He, that is Satan, commands you only what is evil and fasha. Fasha is an Arabic word meaning sinful. And that you should say against the law what you do not know. I'm not a person who you could say is a scholar of Quran, but do you have to be a scholar to understand that? Do you know in the Quran, Allah speaks about nutrition, or the food we eat, more than 250 times. So it must be important. And inshallah, our brother Abdullah will help to pull back the veil and let some of the light shine in on the knowledge that Allah is trying to encourage humanity to use. Because remember, when we eat, all we're doing is trying to get some energy. That it tastes good, that's mercy from Allah. Brother Abdullah, about nutrition, Aki, can you, Aki meaning brother, can you tell us, give us some information about it, please?
Yeah. Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. In the name of Allah, the most gracious, most merciful. Wassalatu wassalamu ala khayri anbiya wa mursaleen Muhammad, and may the peace and blessings of Allah be upon the best of his prophets and messengers Muhammad, wa ala alihi wa sahbihi ajma'in, and upon his family and all of his companions. I'd like to first tail in on what you mentioned previously, is that Islam helps us take an action like just trying to get nourishment from our body and makes it into an act of worship. So we're eating not just for the fact of eating because it's going to give us the building blocks for making muscles or for fighting disease, but it's an act of worship. You know, like you mentioned, you opened with mentioning
Allah. We always say Bismillah.
Bismillah, in the name of Allah, yes. And there's so many things with that. Bismillah, but we don't say Bismillah, I'm going to eat. No, it's implied with the action. And so that's the first thing with nutrition is just our mindset or relationship with food. That's a huge one, because that setting helps encourage us more towards good nutrition versus poor nutrition. And one of the things that you mentioned is that we eat from the good things. And so in the number of times that the food and such forth is mentioned in the Quran, it's interesting that the words that are used in many ways, some of it implies actual food, and some of it implies consumption of something else that's not food. But we're focusing on the food, and it's the Islam gives us more or less the guidance. It gives us the framework to kind of move. When the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu he told us is that the believe that your stomach, your digestive system is in 7 parts, and that the believer, he only eats out of like 1/3 of that, whereas those who are not believers, they may feel the whole thing. And that there's other narrations that talk about that if you feel you need to be to fill yourself, is that have 1/3 of it for food, leave 1/3 of it for water, and 1/3 of it for air.
For digestion.
For digestion, yes. And drinking.
This is a hadith, Sahih hadith from Prophet Muhammad.
Yes, it's in Sahih Bukhari.
Hadith meaning the sayings,
narrations,
the narrations of Prophet Muhammad.
Yes, and so that's in the book of At'imah. Actually in like the books of hadith.
Right, Sahih Muslim, Sahih
Muslim, and and even the ones that deal with the hadith and explaining it. They describe those chapters as at'imah, or food. At'imah is like the plural for ta'am, which is food. And it begins just giving us the proper mindset and the kind of relationship we should have with food, the things that are permissible. And the basis is everything is permissible. That's the basis of all food. In all business, everything is permissible.
Seeing as how we're omnivores, that's what a lot of people think. But go ahead.
Well, in terms of what Allah gives us in the Quran, and tells us in the Quran, He made everything permissible to us. I think early in one of the first shows that you had mentioned that you mentioned the verse from the Quran. I can't recall it right now, but the essence of it is that we've made everything in the earth for you as something for you to use, and made it permissible. And so for food, the base ruling we run off is everything is permissible, and if somebody says it's not, they have to come with a proof, not the opposite around.
Right.
So the base is very wide. Very things are prohibited, and it's upon the one saying it isn't. And but they have to be something that's nourishing. They have to be those things that the balance of the good you get from it is greater than the evil.
The harm.
Like you take the example of like alcohol.
But we are forbidden from swine flesh.
Yes.
We are forbidden from animals that have been killed by other animals, that is gored to death.
Yes.
Something that dies from a fall, or something that has a name of any god or any supposed god, astaghfirullah, of any thing other than Allah pronounced over it.
Talking about prepared food, yes. But that's on land. This section out, the examples of animals that are killed and that are not permissible for us to eat, that's for the land. In the ocean, it's not like true. Yeah. Everything is permissible. Everything, whether it's living or dead.
That's right.
Whether it fell or however it is, it's all permissible. So just having that mindset is that there is a way of how would you say, compartmentalizing the logic we do in feeding ourselves or seeking food.
Okay.
And so the things that you mentioned, in addition to the aspect of is it on land or is it in the water? You know, these things, and that's under general circumstances. You know, not exceptional circumstances, which we're not talking about.
That's not what we're talking about.
Yeah.
Right.
So so I mean, I think the best way of approaching it is like trying to kind of talk about what's the mindset in terms of approaching food.
Okay, you know, like one of the things that in the you know, we're here in the 21st century, and you know what? Pardon?
Is it 22nd? Is it 22nd?
21st.
21st, 2000. Yeah.
Okay, it's you know, one of the things that we're, you know, when you read history, and you see that the early companions of Prophet Muhammad, in fact, early humanity, didn't have the information that we have today, as far as the scientific, you know, what type of nutrients it contains, how many vitamin C, vitamin B, so forth and so on, vitamin A, and all the other things that we gain from the food we eat. One of the things that I remember reading, one of them was kind of funny to me the first time I read it. The second one was never funny to me. And that is how many problems the human being has that's caused by poor nutrition or by eating something that's harmful, but, you know, we like the way it tastes.
Yeah.
Okay? Because a lot of the food we eat now is manufactured in factories. Okay? We eat a lot of pasta. Okay? Now there's different types of pasta. You have some pasta that's made from denatured flour. Other pasta is made from the whole grain flour. You have some recombined foods that we eat. Even meat is doctored. They put chemicals in it now. Even the animals when they're alive. All of these things, and all we're primarily doing when we eat is seeking energy, which comes through the nutrition. Okay? Can you in any way address this?
Yeah, I guess I would first start with where you began, talking about the historic aspect, is that actually, I mean, I think that throughout time, we've always had scientists. If you go, they went to, let's say, the bush, and they ate something, they ate this, and the person keeled over, they died.
Yes, sir.
Or they became sick. That is applied science. Okay. Leave this alone. Okay. And if you notice that when you feed this to your, you know, this particular plant to your herd or your animals, and they produce better milk, or they seem to get meatier, you're going to make sure that you get them in this area. So it's, I would say that it's been more applied science. Okay. It worked in real life, or it didn't work. Okay. And people remember and pass that knowledge on, whether it's herbs and all of those things.
You know, because one of the things I was going to say, one of the things that was funny was one of the books that I read, the author, he says that the only disease we have is our grandmother's recipes. Okay? So I thought about it, I said, grandmother's recipes. And when you think about it, every family, or most families, have a recipe that's been passed down from one generation to the next. And maybe when Grandma first started making it, she was using all natural ingredients. Okay, stuff maybe that was even grown in her own yard or on the farm that the family owned, a small farm. And then what happens is, as time passes, is that recipe, you know, is passed from one generation to the next. The ingredients we start to use have become more and more synthetic. Okay, things that are manufactured in a laboratory or in a factory. Okay, and even though, you know, we say, oh, this is Grandma's recipe, the ingredients are not Grandma's. It's not the same. Okay, that's the other thing. I'm sorry, brother, to cut you off, but I'm just thinking about what it was that you know, made me laugh. Because when I finally got it, I said, oh, you know, because I thought about all the recipes we had from my grandmother, okay, and my family.
Yeah, I think what you touched on was it's a real important thing. It's like eating is like it's like a good sentence. You can't understand it properly except for in context. So, and there's always been some degree of experimentation with foods. we're just talking about the level of experimentation. I remember when I was in junior high school, I took horticulture, and one of the things they teach you is how you splice the plants, you graft them. You graft, you cut it, and you like the feature of this one, and you graft it to another, you see if it'll live, and then you have a feature.
Which they don't do anymore. Now, most plants are genetically modified.
It's just another level. See, that's what I'm saying, it's just a degree. It's the same thing, but they're able to do it in a much earlier stage.
When you
from
put a fish gene into a tomato?
Well, I don't know if they've done that.
They did.
But
That's the first thing that was grafted.
Well, the thing is that we've always played to see what we could get away with. In our nature, we've always looked to see, well, can you do this and that? It's by nature what we do.
Okay, but just for clarification, when you're talking about grafting, you're talking about maybe taking a tomato plant from a plum tomato from Italy, and maybe one of the big tomatoes, I forget the name, what they call them, all right, from New York or from someplace else, and taking the stem, cutting it a certain way, cutting and opening into the vine, inserting it, and having a way to tie it in so that it begins to draw its nutrition from that stem. And it gives you, maybe it'll take on some of the characteristics of the one tomato from the other. They do that a lot with apple trees, with grapes and stuff like that.
Yeah.
But when you're talking about genetic engineering, you're talking about actually taking a gene from something else that has nothing to do with that particular the vegetable that you're trying to change or to modify, and inserting it, like I said, the fish gene into a tomato. They did that way back in I think the late 70s, early 80s. I remember it distinctly. And they did it because they found, the fish, they don't get frozen, and they figured if they put a fish gene in a tomato, okay, that it would mean that the tomatoes could survive cold weather, okay? And that's the reason they did it.
But
they were horrible tasting. They were nasty. They were
but they probably didn't freeze. So they achieved one thing at the expense of something else.
Okay.
And when you I think there was a program somebody had recommended. It talked about the beginnings of civilization. And when they talked about the beginnings of how civilization started, they talk about it in terms of agriculture, the ability to take a crop that grew wild and find an organized way of producing that singular crop that you found nourishment from. Taking that wild animal that had the potential to be domestic, and so that you could raise it for food. Yeah. So I would just say some of it is that we're only doing it degrees, and then there's extremes to that causes harm, and then there's other aspects that may not be benefit. So I think it's more or less like degrees, and find out what's too much, because it's always been.
But one of the things that modified, two things that you mentioned, all right, that calls to mind, is that also by farming, as we used to do it, okay, not the commercial farming like we do now, two things were encouraged. One was the formation of communities, okay, because people have to cooperate. And the other thing was the exchange, all right? Okay, I have tomatoes.
Bartering.
Bartering. And you have chickens, I'll give you so many kilos of tomatoes for a chicken, or like in this part of the world, dates, and there are very strict laws governing dates, like inferior dates for good quality dates, things of this nature, all right? All right, so the bartering system is one of the things, but what happened was it led to capitalism, because you always had an individual who wanted to get a monopoly on something. Oh, people like those apples. I'm going to get that apple orchard, and then I'm going to have control over those apples, and then I'm going to sell it to these people at a very high price. And then what happens is, because now he's just breeding, because apples actually are designed to continue to change every year. You don't get the same apples if you allow them to grow naturally. And so what happened is but what they did is they found ways to, and they did it with bananas also, they did it with a lot of things. They found ways to continue the same production for taste, smell, and quality of the apple, okay, all right, to day that we don't even have apples that we had when I was a child. We don't have Macintosh. We don't have Rome Beauties. At least you don't see them out on a commercial level. All right. This is called a pink lady apple. All right. It's quite delicious. Quite delicious. Very sweet. Okay.
And that's
but
why you bought it.
The pink. I bought it because it was on sale. But the pink ladies next year, the same crop, may not taste as sweet. They may not be as, you know, even they may not even look the same. Okay. Because what we've done is we have done things that are that change the quality and the way it looks. All right. And what happens is, well, you know, inshallah, what happens is that we're running out of time. Okay. And I'm hoping that, you know, inshallah, you know, that, you know, we can, in the next episode, we can go further with this.
Inshallah.
Okay. So, you know, when I read to you from the Quran, and Allah says, eat what is grown on the earth, natural and pure. Okay? You know, Muslims, generally speaking, until recent times, didn't suffer the same illnesses and diseases that other people suffered, because we used to eat natural and pure. But in some of the places that are in existence today, some of the countries that have recently been formed, we're starting to use a lot of the artificial fertilizers and things like that. And now we're starting to come up with the same diseases as people in other countries. This is not me talking. This is science talking. These are statistics that are being presented. So, you know, Islam works. Allah tells us how with his book, the Quran.